John Laurinaitis is one of the most infamous personalities to have ever worked in WWE. The fact that he was at such a high level in the company meant that he often took advantage of his position to do whatever he wanted. At such a level as the former head of talent relations in WWE, he had a lot of power and didn't often use it to do good. In fact, most of the stories shared about him are negative in nature and sees the former WWE employee put in a very bad light. Before we get into the rest of the video, don't forget to press that like button and make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Rambles with notifications on. John Laurinaitis is no longer a part of the company, and it's largely due to some of the allegations that have emerged against him. Earlier, it was known that he had taken part in blackmailing certain female employees to have sexual relations with him, and shared this with Vince McMahon as well. The latest allegations that surfaced in the lawsuit by Janelle Grant saw those claims further ratified, as he was accused of being a part of going along with Vince McMahon and sex trafficking Grant. The two of them also apparently had threesomes with Grant, during the course of which McMahon is said to have defecated on the head of Grant. Since then, Laurinaitis has lumped himself together with Grant, saying that he was a victim of McMahon as well, and saying that the WWE chairman abused the power he had over him, and Laurinaitis himself had never wanted to take part in any of the illegal activities. Mr. Laurinaitis denies the allegations in the misguided complaint and will be vigorously defending these charges in court, not the media. Brennan wrote on Laurinaitis' behalf, "Like the plaintiff, Mr. Laurinaitis is a victim in this case, not a predator. The truth will come out." There have been reports that Laurinaitis was made to be the fall guy for McMahon backstage after the legal allegations first emerged and the official was fired. When Rene Dupree was in WWE, he was one of the youngest stars in the industry. Naturally, as a result, there were times when he was making a few mistakes here and there. On his podcast, he spoke about how he had an accident in a match with RVD and ended up getting shouted at by John Laurinaitis. During the match, he had been hit with a German suplex and he rolled right onto the back of his head. The referee thought that Dupree had broken his neck. This happened as he had jumped too early. Now, in wrestling, accidents are common and can happen, but Laurinaitis didn't take the view. Instead of being concerned for the star that he might have broken his neck, he started to shout at him backstage, instead saying, "Why did he jump in the first place? Yeah, everybody thought I broke my neck, and of course I think Johnny Ace got mad because why did you jump?" The result was that Laurinaitis punished him backstage and he had some heat as well. John Laurinaitis is not known for being a generous man, and he has done whatever he wanted whenever he wanted in his own career. Fit Finlay was one of the top names backstage in WWE and managed to be one of the respected stars when it came to mat wrestling. He established himself over the years of wrestling and developed his reputation. He had to retire thanks to a table spot where he injured his leg, and he retired to work backstage in WWE. However, he made an in-ring return. Initially, when he made his return to the ring, Finlay was supposed to get a push by himself. However, John Laurinaitis really didn't like Finlay and decided he wanted to derail his push, and so put him with Hornswoggle in an infamous story. While Finlay and Hornswoggle both made the most of it and managed to get themselves over with the crowd despite Laurinaitis' best attempts, it was not what the original plan had been. Thanks to Laurinaitis' issues against Finlay, the star was never allowed to wrestle and reach the level that fans knew that he was capable of. As the head of talent relations in WWE, hiring stars and finding new talent was a large part of his duties. However, hiring enhancement talent is usually done by someone who is familiar with the wrestling industry. Laurinaitis had no idea who anyone was outside WWE, and thus ended up making hiring decisions that are questionable today. Laurinaitis decided to invite Xavier Woods for a tryout in WWE. His real name was Austin, and so he was trying to send him the invite, but instead he sent it to Adam Cole, whose real real name was also Austin. It took a long time for there to be a realization that there had been a mistake, and instead of allowing Cole to come and try out, he was given work as an extra for CM Punk. In the end, Cole would go to WWE, but it would take much longer than that, and ended up being years before he was hired by the company, whereas he could have just hired him then. What makes this worse is that this is not the only time he had an identity crisis when trying to hire a wrestler. Zach Gowen would have some fun appearances in WWE. He was working in TNA in 2003 as a wrestler with one leg and was doing really well. Vince McMahon was aware of him and wanted him in WWE for a long run. However, instead of that happening, thanks to Laurinaitis' involvement, it would be a long time before that story could be told. Laurinaitis was the one who was tasked with signing him, but naturally, he signed another wrestler who also had one leg. He gave him a contract. It took a long time to correct and force WWE to shelve their plans. Several original ideas had to be thrown away, but thankfully when Gowen arrived, he still had somewhat of a memorable run with the company. In modern wrestling, everyone is aware of AJ Lee and the role she played in making women's wrestling a topic of conversation again. It's safe to say that the women's revolution actually started from her involvement in the main roster. However, when it came to Laurinaitis, he didn't care about the actual wrestling ability of the girl. He just cared about how the women looked in bikinis and treated them horribly. As it turned out, he was hiring most of the women in WWE from swimwear and lingerie catalogs, just so that they could serve as eye candy and not for the wrestling experience. This was how he hired the likes of Alicia Fox, Kelly Kelly, and even his future stepdaughters, the Bella Twins. Most of the women he hired didn't have any of the experience in the ring and thus derailed and put back the women's division years. When it came to stars who had actual talent like AJ Lee, she shared in her book that a backstage official, who has later been recognized as Laurinaitis, as saying that she was way too ugly to succeed and men would not want to see her. It's safe to say that Laurinaitis knows nothing about wrestling. John Laurinaitis clearly has never had any regard whatsoever for the wrestling business, and it's just a coincidence that he works in it, at least according to Jim Cornette. Any regular listeners of Cornette's podcast will be aware of some of Laurinaitis' backstage behavior and treatment of wrestlers, irrespective of storylines. Cornette said that there were multiple times that stars were called up from development with no notice, leaving the developmental organization floundering with a half-told story. Models were often sent to him with the instructions that they had to be booked. Cornette said that Laurinaitis interfering was one of the major reasons that he quit. In 2003, Doug Basham was being booked by Cornette as the top heel of OVW. However, he was called up to the main roster and Laurinaitis made the wrestler shave his head. Cornette had an angry call with John as a result. Cornette saw you with a shaved head, and I guess he called up John Laurinaitis right away and said, "Hey, John Laurinaitis, my top heel looks like a 40-year-old truck driver. You can't pretend with a guy who's bald. I'd book him in a hair match, shave his head, sell some tickets. Thank you, F you, bye," Rene Dupree shared. Cornette has also been open about how everyone backstage hated Laurinaitis. The truth is that almost nobody liked Laurinaitis. He made a lot of money thanks to his connection with Vince, but he was by no means a creative genius. John Laurinaitis was also partially behind the budget cuts and releases of multiple stars. When it came out to Laurinaitis calling Nia Jax, he told her that she was being released and that there was nothing that she could do. She offered to take a pay cut that would have solved the issue had it been a budget cut, but he turned her down and said that was not it. He was just like, "Hey kid, I hate to do this." Instantly when he said that, I was like, "Oh, am I getting released?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm so sorry, due to the budget cut." You know, the whole spiel. I was just like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll take a pay cut if that's what's needed," just because I knew it was a whole script. He's like, "Oh, that's not it. The real reason was clearly not the budget cut." Brock Lesnar is without question one of the best and most terrifying wrestlers to have ever entered a WWE ring. As a result, he would show off his abilities in the ring and did things that no one thought that he could do. In OVW, he once hit a shooting star press, but Paul Heyman told him not to do it again as he didn't need it to get over and would just hurt him in the long run. For the most part, Lesnar followed this. However, ahead of his match against Kurt Angle at WrestleMania, aka one of the biggest moments of his career, he paid attention to the wrong person. Laurinaitis advised him to hit the shooting star press and convinced him to hit Angle with it. The rest is history. Lesnar went to hit it but missed completely, landing on his head. This gave him a concussion, and only instinct was able to let him finish the match. The move put him on the shelf for a bit and nearly ended his career, all because Laurinaitis felt the need to interfere. The fact that he did whatever he wanted backstage was not enough, but he also put the wrestlers' lives in danger in the ring. Cowboy Bob Orton was a legend and had returned to work with his son Randy during his feud with The Undertaker. It was almost a year-long feud with 4 pay-per-view matches, with all of them coming to a head at Hell in a Cell at the 2005 Armageddon event. During the match, Bob Orton got busted open in a pre-arranged spot that had been fixed by John Laurinaitis. At this time, Bob was suffering from hepatitis, a potentially deadly disease which spreads through blood. Laurinaitis signed off on the blood spot without informing The Undertaker. This could have resulted in the Phenom getting hepatitis as well. Undertaker was livid, but thankfully he walked away without suffering. And these were the wildest things said about John Laurinaitis. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all later.